Welcome back to another episode of Expansion of Consciousness. I'm your host, Jason Medlock, and it's season 5. And we've had a number of great guests over the last 4 seasons. But we're here to continue to help you expand your consciousness and to provide different ways and different understandings and different authors who write about different experiences they've had with consciousness, with mindset, hypnosis, energy healing, and channeling. So we talk about all these things so that people can be aware. Just can be aware of the power that they have from within. And that's why I'm excited about Helen Gretchen Jones. And she's going to be our guest today. But Helen is a compassionate death doula, intuitive. And she's a channeler who writes about shared death experiences and the essence of spiritual consciousness. And we know about consciousness on this show. It lives beyond the body. But her writings focus on fostering loving connections with oneself and others. And her work emphasizes trusting personal experiences and the teachings she channels from her team in spirit, known as her A team. And Helen holds a dual master's degree in art, history, and theology from St. Edward's University. She's also a certified sound bowl therapist, Reiki, hypnosis, and past life regressionist. See, we already speak the same language because I have those certifications as well. And that's why this is going to be an exciting interview. And just beyond her role as a death doula, Helen serves as an intuitive guide, delivering messages from the spirit. And she co-teaches seminars with her community, ranging from grounding techniques to interpreting messages, messages that or signs that we may receive from the spirit. Just enriching diverse women across this entire Central Texas area. And I'm right here in Houston, Texas. So this is a fellow Texas girl here. And when she's not working with hospice patients or writing or teaching, Helen can actually be found on the family ranch, just hanging out with her husband, Taylor, and their children. But without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Helen Gretchen Jones. Hi there, Helen. How are you today?
I'm good, Jason. Thank you for having me on your show.
Awesome. I'm glad that you're going to be speaking with us today and speaking to the audience, and what you've been able to accomplish as a channeler, as a spiritual teacher, as a death doula. It's pretty amazing, and I know that you're going to go in depth when you're speaking about what you do. But I want to start with many things that you've seen. You've witnessed many profound moments with individuals at the end of their lives, and this is just something that you've grown into being very good at. Can you share any specific experiences that you've had, and maybe a deep impact you've had on someone, or how you've changed their view on life and death?
Sure. We're just going to dive right on in. Here we go. Okay. So, a lot of my spiritual experience as a death doula, I help people transition from this world into the next. I help them not feel alone, and I help the family to cope with some of the grief that can come along with that process. I have experienced many spiritual bedside happenings, and that's what I've written about in my book. I have written about a lot of these spiritual journeys that these people have towards death. And I am blessed to have been able to take part in a lot of these spiritual journeys because I do have a connection to spirit, and because I can see and feel spirit pretty easily. So I have what are called shared death experiences with many of my patients. So one of probably the most profound experience that I've had, and this is going to sound a little out there, but I feel like this might be the right show to share, was with a NOTA patient. NOTA stands for No One Dies Alone. It's a program that is based in hospitals, and it's for people who never had kids. Maybe they're the last of their kind. Maybe they burned all those bridges. Maybe their family lives out of the country and they can't come in to be with them. So the hospital has these people who are dying alone. And with the changing healthcare systems, nurses aren't able to sit as long as they used to be able to with these patients. And so they need people, like volunteers, to come and sit with people so that they don't die alone. So I received an email that there was a patient waiting to receive a volunteer through the NOTA program, and I'd already been up late. I was super tired. I just wanted to go to bed, but I asked my team in spirit. I was like, "All right, guys, if I'm supposed to be there, you're going to have to wake me up early. I'm not going to set an alarm, and you're going to have to get me up like at 4:30 in the morning to be there for the 6 a.m. shift." And at 4:28, I woke up. And I woke up to the sound of a song playing in my head, which is often how spirit connects with me initially. And it was called Colors by the Black Pumas. And I love that song. And in the lyrics of that song, it talks about the blue skies and the green meadows, and it really paints a beautiful picture. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. So I get up, I get dressed, I start driving, I turn on the radio in the car, and Colors by the Black Pumas is on. And I was like, oh, you guys are good. All right. So at that moment, I knew that my patient was going to be suffering with anxiety. He was going to be Black and he was going to be a male. And I think that spirit gives me a little bit of information before connecting with a patient or client, just so that it validates when I walk in, okay, that information's correct. And so I know that I'm tuned in appropriately. So sure enough, I arrive to meet Mr. Virgil, who checked all those boxes. Mr. Virgil was already to a stage of unconsciousness, which is common through the NOTA patients. But his body was going through severe anxiety. And as I tried to bring him comfort physically, it wasn't really helping too much. So then I had to tune in and connect to him on a spiritual level. Upon doing that, the hospital room transformed into this gorgeous meadow. There were flowers and blue skies, very similar to the picture that the lyrics from Colors was depicting. And I became aware that I was in two worlds at once. I am physically sitting with a physical version of Mr. Virgil in the hospital room. And I am also aware that Mr. Virgil and I are standing in this field, staring now at this forest off to our front and to the right. And so, for anyone who hasn't experienced being in two worlds at once, the way I like to explain it is if I were to ask you to close your eyes and imagine the beach and just imagine hearing the waves crashing on the shore, feel the sand beneath your toes, hear the cry of a seagull, or feel that breeze across your skin. Being able to imagine that and yet also be aware of where you're sitting, you're in two worlds at once. So it can be very subtle. And with practice, that can intensify. So don't be dismissive if you have an experience. You're like, oh, I'm probably making that up. Just let it flow, you know? So it can feel very subtle, like imagining something. So I'm in two worlds at once at this point, very common with these shared death experiences. And when I'm standing in this field, it is the most incredible experience. Every single thing emanates light from within. Every blade of grass, every tree leaf, every single thing has a sound too, like a humming or a tone or something I can't really place. And it doesn't have a beat, but there's a musical quality to it. So we're standing there, and I can tell that we have to walk through this forest to get to this welcome home party, which are common occurrences when people first transition. And I know the party is just beyond that forest, and I know his mom is waiting there because I saw her image flash in my mind. And he had anxiety about going into that forest. And I'm standing in the field observing, watching him, and I can feel his anxiety about it. And all of a sudden, this being comes out of the forest, and she is beautiful. She's bigger than we are. She's blue and white light. And then I realize she's me. I am now in three places at once. I am an observer in the field. I am sitting in the hospital room physically. And now I am ushering Mr. Virgil into the forest to walk him to his welcome home party. And he's like, I'm really nervous. I don't feel worthy. I feel like I've had too many sins in my life. And I don't know, out of nowhere, I present him this box. It's wrapped with a purple ribbon. And I said, inside this box is your life. The me of light says this. Inside this box is your life. And you're allowed to open up this box whenever you want and relive any part of your experiences, Mr. Virgil. And in that feeling, in that moment, I was feeling, I can tell you, unconditional love. Now, I have children that I love unconditionally, but this was different. This man could have done anything in his life, and it didn't matter to me at all. I loved him so much, just profoundly loved him. And I tried to project that to him so that he would feel safe and know that he was safe to come with me, and he did. And as we walked through the forest, there was another moment where he had anxiety. And then I become even bigger. I just was expansive, and I held him in my arms and I kissed the top of his head as if he were a child. The trees fell away and we were in a backdrop of like outer space or stars or something until he felt safe enough to continue and we were back in the forest again. So there's still a me of light walking him through the forest. There's the me in the field of flowers back there observing, and then the me in the hospital holding his hand, also observing and witnessing a different point of view. And eventually we do make it to the edge of the forest, but he asks me, what's going to happen to my uncle and my nephew? And when he asks me that, I show him a projection of potential life paths for both of them. And I wasn't allowed to see it. So my awareness shot back to the observer in the flowers in the field. And I was unable to observe what could potentially happen to these other two remaining people back on Earth. And then when he was satisfied with that, we continued on our journey. So
Wow.
that is one of the most profound experiences. I'm looking forward to more of those where I can be in 3 places at once. It was absolutely astonishing.
Awesome. And Gretchen, when did you realize, wow, I can do this? What were the steps like in having this epiphany? And maybe it wasn't an epiphany, maybe it was just over time you developed into where you are now. Walk us through that.
So I've always had a connection with spirit ever since I was little, and it would be dismissed by my family. I didn't have a very supportive family around this, only because they
Yeah.
didn't understand, you know? It was
Yeah, I know.
they're supportive now, but at the time it was more, I don't know. It was the '80s. They weren't, that wasn't their vibe. So, but I always knew that I had it within me. And when I would have these experiences, even as a kid, they would be very transformative. So it didn't make me question my experience. It made me question the wisdom of my family. Could I really trust what they were saying? Do they really know everything? So I kept that inside. When my father died in 2015, and I realized that I wanted to work with the dying community because he died with some of my family members not having closure, and I wanted to alleviate that for some other families in our communities. So when I started working with the dying community, my gifts shifted from just simply being able to connect to my team in spirit to being able to observe shared death experiences, observe. Spirit will now give me a ballpark of when someone's going to die. And so that gives me an idea of how I can work with the family, how long I have to negotiate these moments of forgiveness and closure for families and patients. So I think as we put our focus somewhere, and mine was the dying community since 2015, I think my gifts have moved into that direction for now.
Okay, so in your book, okay, Whispers from Spirit Guides. Okay, this notion of shared death experiences and the encounters that you've had with the deceased loved ones. So, how do these experiences, how do they bring comfort um and guidance to the people who are grieving?
So I feel out the family members, and if they're open, and most of the time they are, to hearing the potential that they have a grandmother standing next to the bed, or that I can maybe suggest what I'm also experiencing and seeing. When people are in a moment of grief, they sometimes feel desperate for any kind of information. Yeah, and they're open to tell me whatever you can, and then I'll process it later and decide if I want to like it or not. So most of the time, they're open to at least considering these. And whenever I truly believe, and so when someone has lost someone, I they can go to counselors. They're excellent tools and resources and therapists and all fantastic. But I swear the most healing can take place with a really good evidential medium where you can talk to your person in spirit. And it just opens you up to the hope that maybe there is something more to the idea that you are communicating with your loved one in spirit and that there's something so much more outside the rods and cones of our physical eyes. So I think more healing can really take place with a medium if you're open to it than months and maybe even years with a counselor or therapist. But that's just because I'm coming from a spiritual perspective.
And I understand what you're saying because I've had many mental health experts on the show, counselors that help with depression, anxiety, all that stuff, and they all talk about talk therapy can only go so far.
Mhm.
And after talk therapy, they would always say that, hypnosis, something that can touch the subconscious mind, actually really finishes off the job. And you
Yes.
and I are saying, hey, if you start with hypnosis and at the level, I do level 2 quantum healing hypnosis technique. So
Mhm.
even at that level, I'm like, yeah, I can clear you in 3 days. So
Yes, start
I
there.
definitely know what you mean. I definitely agree in that regard. But I was reading through my notes, and you mentioned that a voice urged you to write this book or to write a book.
Yes,
Can
to
you
write
can
this
you
book, yeah.
yeah. So can you tell us more about that moment and how it shaped your decision to become a writer?
Yes, I can tell you that it was, 3 years ago in June,
Mhm.
and I was laying in bed. I was about to wake up and I heard my team in spirit. So I usually hear my team in spirit in my head, and they can come across with male or female voices. And sometimes I differentiate their personalities only because I need that, but they're really a
Right.
collective. It's not, it doesn't really matter. And they always say, don't focus on our names or what we look like. It's really about the message. But this was one of my male spirit guides, and his voice was coming outside my head as if his face was right in front of me. I didn't see him, but his voice was right there. And he said, "You're going to write a book." And I'm like, "A book? Well, what would I even write about?" And he said, "Write what you know. It's going to take you approximately 2 years to complete. It took me 2.5." So he was a little
Mhm.
off. But um, but write what I know. I mean, that was like, what do I know? I did not feel qualified. I've never wanted to write a book. I don't feel qualified to write a book. Like, who am I to write a book? That's how I've always kind of thought about it. And I started thinking about, I've had years of journals where I have journaled the journeys of these patients that I have had, only because I find them fascinating. And so I had all these journals. And plus, I sit with my team in spirit when I do my little morning meditations, and I'll write their channeled messages out. So I had journals of channeled messages and journals of all these really amazing stories. And I just kind of put them all together and made this book, Healing Whispers from Spirit Guides. And it has been a real journey for me, because putting it out there publicly, I don't think I would have been ready to do it any sooner. I had young
Awesome.
kids, I didn't wanna be judged, like, I had my own issues that I was working through around that, and then since putting it out there, I'm just like, "You know what? I'm just gonna own who I am, no more hiding in the shadows, and just put it out there." So it's been great.
Well, I have a lot of compassion in my work as a practitioner, and I know you do too. And I can see it, and I know it plays a big role in your as a death doula. Just compassion for helping others for the greater good all. So, but how do you use this compassion to support both the dying and their loved ones during such a challenging time?
So, I used to think that I had to be really, really strong when I'm sitting with these patients and, hold it all together.
Mhm.
And that gets really hard to do sometimes, whenever, because you get connected to some of these patients. One of my patients I had for 4 years. So and you just love them just for being there. And so the first time I allowed myself to cry, the family started crying. And then they started allowing themselves to be vulnerable and open. And then they shared the most beautiful, vulnerable words with their dying loved one. And he shared back. And I realized that allowing myself to be in the moment, even if it means I'm being vulnerable, was actually a tool that helped other people to be comfortable in their vulnerability. And so
Yes.
that's how I share that compassion. I can tell you, though, my team in spirit started, like, I don't know, forcing compassion on me at around 21. And it is important to note that when you're a little kid, you are self-centered. It's how you survive. And then you judge your family and you're like, what do I need to do to fit into my family? What do I need to do to fit into my peer groups at school? So you're very judgmental and you're all self-centered, and it's all part of growing up. And then
Mm.
I guess at some point, as we turn into young adults and move forward, we have to stop being so self-centered and think of the greater whole. And I think that's when my team stepped in and they forced compassion on me for the last 20 years. And now they're shifting it to connection. So you're already connected, right? You're a podcaster. So you already have people share their stories, you share your stories. And so you're weaving all this connection already. This is something new that my team is replacing compassion and moving me into connection now. But compassion is very important too.
That's awesome. You know, in your book, you mentioned something called the Science Club. Also, can you explain what that is,
Okay.
and how does it help a person explore spirituality? You know,
Okay. Science Club's a little out there. But it is I went to go do a meditation in my closet, the quietest place in the house, and I was in there, and I was asking my team in spirit to give me my A team to give me information on time, help me understand time better, help me understand how we can work through time and, like, the illusion of time, all that stuff. I just wanted more clear responses, and all of a sudden, a gentleman appeared in my closet. Now I could see him, and I didn't recognize him, and he was, British, and he had some stuff to share with me, and afterwards, he turned into, like, a
I like this
collective.
interview.
He wa
Yes.
he was a scientist, and he kinda morphed into a collective of scientists, and he was in black and white, and when I see a person in black and white or a spirit in black and white, it usually means they lived between the years of 1920 and 1969 respectively, and I think that's just my photography was in black and white for so long and TV, so I think that's my own hang up around photography and black and white images. So, when I my meditation was over, there was all this scientific stuff that he shared, and I went to go look him up, and I typed in British physicists, and I just went through all these British physicists that I knew were in that time frame, and there he was. His name was Paul Dirac, and I didn't know who he was, but apparently he won a Nobel Prize, and he's kind of like a big deal in the physics community. So, Paul Dirac, and after that, he would meet with me like once a month or so, and I called them Science Club. They're a group of scientists that come in, and they put me in, and they ask me to research different things. So it was
Okay.
like, yeah, that's who they are.
So okay. So here I am about to ask you, what technique are you using? And then you say it. I'm in the closet doing my meditation. So now my next question would have to be, even before my next planned question that I had, are you a transcendental meditator? Or are you just doing regular meditation? Uh, is it guided meditation, something special you use to call upon these beings? Do you use the closet? I'm sorry, do you use the staircase technique where you walk all the way down to the heart space and then open the door and walk down the hallway and open the door? Because this is how I was taught the channel, was to move from the crown all the way down to the heart space. And then once I got to the heart space, and this is all visualization, and
Yeah.
then walk through the door and go to the end of the door and open the door and observe this beautiful scenery and observe this shiny bench, this bench that's full of pure white light, and sit on this bench and watch the being come and sit next to you. So that was my introduction, how I started the channel, and I use it when I'm performing galactic energy healing, which is just like Reiki. You said meditation. So what or specifically are you doing to have this level of interaction?
So I have done the going into the down the stairs into through the door and into the bench. I love that method, by the way. So if
Yes.
anyone heard you just mention how it is right now, they should try it because it's phenomenal. And that's
Yes.
how I used to start it. Now I just kind of go in there and I'm like, all right, guys, let's do this. And I
While you're
I
in your
like
meditation.
well, nope, before I even start, I just walk in
Okay,
the
yeah, you're
closet.
good now.
I've got a
Yeah.
bench in there.
Yeah. You know what you're doing. Yeah, you're a baller.
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
but I love the bench one. That's one of my favorites.
Right. So you had these encounters with spirits and beings of light,
Mhm.
they are like a theme in your book.
Yeah.
These encounters you've had with these light beings. So how have these experiences influenced your understanding of spirituality and the meaning of our existence? How's that influenced you, and what have you learned from this?
It's changed everything. I realized that there's more to everything than just planet
Yes.
Earth. There's more to us than just our bodies. And I allow all of that to shift my perspectives every day in life. It's just how things are now. Absolutely. I look forward to hearing advice from beings of light, and I may not always take it, but, they're usually very wise, and I can't think of a time when they weren't. I can think of a time when I didn't wanna take their advice because I didn't like what they were saying, but, for the most part, everything that they suggest, because they never tell me to do anything, they suggest it, except for the book. But,
What kept me interested was when I first learned regression, past life, meditative past life regression therapy. And that's how I learned it at first. And I'm like, okay, I was a white woman with red hair in the back of a wagon. I think we were in the 1800s having a baby.
oh
So
my
I'm
goodness.
seeing this in this regression. She's teaching me how to use meditative past life regression. Then obviously I stepped it up and joined the QHHT school of Dolores Cannon. And past life regression is a built-in technique we use. So okay, at that point, I'm like, wait a minute. uh, these experiences I'm having make it shifting the way I think about everything,
Mhm.
how these spirits and beings are coming through the patients. We record it and we record everything and we audio record
Yes.
everything, video, and they're coming through this brilliance. So then at some point in my spiritual walk awakening, I then popped out of my body trying to get to the Akashic records. And I popped
Oh, how
out and,
exciting.
and I'm in the corner, and I write about this in my book, Empowered by Consciousness. And I'm in the top corner of the room. And that's what really made me say, okay, yeah, my perception of life, and I was floating through the house and all that stuff. I could see me, my body, and I wrote about channeling. I have a whole section on channeling in my book as well, but channeling and astral projection. But when you have those level of experiences, and I know you've had experiences that make you look at where we are in life, and we just kind of look around like, there's more to this vessel, this body that we're in. There's a whole other realm and reality that's really we've just scratched the surface of it.
Well, you talking about popping out of your body like that, I frequently see that, and I think it's important to share, for anyone who's lost someone. I frequently
Right.
see people standing outside of their bodies before that last breath is taken,
Mm,
and I think that they don't need to go through what could be
yes.
considered the suffering aspect of struggling to breathe at the very end, and just like that, they just pop out, just like you did, and it's just a
Mm,
different focus, and the body's going through its natural process of shutting down, but the
mm.
person isn't experiencing it, and I think that's important to note, especially since you know what it feels like to pop out of your body. It's really not that hard.
That's not.
I mean, until you try to do it.
It's not.
But
I mean, yeah, well, yeah. After your first one, when you keep trying, it becomes harder because you have to have this level of peace and love in your
yes.
heart, and your intentions have to be for the greater good of all before you can even consistently have OBEs. And there are methods. I mean, there's the pull-up method, there's the roll method. I've tried them all, I've done them all, I've written about this topic. But it's interesting once you've had that experience and you've given yourself these verbal commands while you're these mental commands while you're outside of the body. I mean, it's not like you're talking, you have to think, and then it happens. So just Bob Monroe, all of his books, Far Journeys, is one of them I read, Journeys Out of the Body, Aaron Pavlin's Astral Projection Handbook. Just you read this stuff and it happens to you, and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
I'm actually existing in an astral body. Although when I've been in my remote viewing sessions, I'm a certified scientific remote viewer, and I'm a associate remote viewer. And when I'm in these remote viewing sessions, I was taught by Tony Civilale with the Remote View Academy that as a remote viewer, we're actually moving our consciousness to different
Mm.
places, gathering information. And so that's when I really understood um, that astral body, moving your consciousness. I mean, there's so many different ways you can experience outside of the body, and it's just fascinating. I just, it's just fascinating. A lot of different uh there's a lot of different things we can do as humans. We just have to tap in.
We have to believe that we can, and we have to
Yes.
be told that we can so that we can think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, and you had experiences as a child that, like you said a minute ago, probably you didn't always understand them. And when you told somebody, they were probably like, "Hey, stop it, stop with the nonsense." But those experiences, those early experiences that you did have, did it shape you in any kind of way on your spiritual path, and the work that you do right now?
It did, yes. I remember hearing a voice, and that was always sort of how it started before I started seeing spirit, or if I saw spirit, I didn't recognize it as outside my normal experience, and maybe I thought everybody could see that, but, definitely hearing a voice, and the voice sometimes would be so simple. If my parents were telling me something, a reason we couldn't go do something or a reason plans had changed or whatever, and maybe they were telling me a little white lie like parents do with kids so that they're not so disappointed, my voice would correct me, or they'd correct them, but I could hear it in my head, and they'd say, "That's not quite accurate." And it gave me an idea of, or sometimes someone's maybe not being fully honest and they're talking with their hands. I'll see a little bit of a shadow come between their hands, but only if their hand crosses in front of their chest. So there's like certain things that spirit have given me just to
Mm.
recognize authenticity. I think mostly to encourage me to maintain mine and not be afraid of who I am. But I still wasn't ready to come out of the spiritual closet for a long time. But my dad would tell me things like, I believe that you believe that's what you saw. And that was so discouraging to me because it was
Mm.
his way of saying, I don't believe you, but good for you for believing that. So I would never do that now to anybody else. I'm open because the more I learn, the more I can't believe how much more I'm learning. There's so much more to learn. The more questions you have.
And everybody's story is important, and it's important that we tell our stories and have a voice, so that we can share with people that may be going through the same thing. And I know you've shared a number of stories. So, in your opinion, how do you think sharing our stories, our thoughts, help us connect with others and find this deeper meaning in our lives?
So I think when people share their stories, other people hear them
Mhm.
and they offer them grace. They're less judgmental of that person and they can relate to that person. They start to see similarities between them and the other person's stories. And when we do that, the more people who share those stories and the more people that relate to each other, the more peace and judgment free shifts in the way we perceive others starts to happen. And you're doing it all the time as a podcaster. You're sharing stories and allowing people to hear those stories and offering a little bit of peace that ripples out in the world one little episode at a time. So I think sharing stories is incredibly important to world peace, the biggest
It
thing we
is.
can hope for.
It is. And so when people finish reading Healing Whispers from the Spirit Guides, what do you hope they take away from it?
I hope they take away that life is eternal, that our bodies are vehicles that we are grateful to have and utilize, but that there's so much more beyond these physical bodies. And I hope they recognize also that by connecting to other people and finding a place in which they feel comfortable serving, even if it's in a very small way, we strengthen those connections and we help to offer others a little bit more compassion, which then in turn brings them a little bit more light to their day, their
Mm.
lives, actually.
And that's encouraging them to keep exploring and
Oh,
keep moving through your journey. There's so much to learn. So
it's the
much
fun
to learn.
part.
Wow. Wow. And you know, your book also talks about forgiveness and the fear that comes with dying, or just death in itself. Uh, do these emotions affect the dying process? And how do people, or what do they do to find peace? During that particular time.
So, forgiveness and fear absolutely shape the dying process. It's my
Hmm.
experience so far that people are typically fearful when they first receive a terminal illness.
Hmm.
And depending on their faith and their belief systems, actually, it can either continue more fear or there could be a level of peace that's brought in. A lot of people who have very strict religious beliefs
Right.
sometimes struggle the most because
Hmm.
they are fearing judgment. And then sometimes my patients who are atheists, who are expecting nothing, are pleasantly surprised and they just go with ease. So I think if you allow yourself to have that closure with families, like we talked about earlier, with being vulnerable and saying what you need to say, um, those people tend to transition more. And the family seems to be able to jumpstart their grieving process with a little bit more ease. But when there is a lack of closure and there's more fear, it's almost like you can feel the resistance when you walk in the room. It's like the person doesn't quite want to pass and it just they linger a little longer and they hold on hoping for something different. And so hopefully with the help of a death doula or a very compassionate and patient family member, that's really all it takes to sit there and lovingly talked about how you're safe right now, how there's so much more, be open to experiencing more, and that can ease the person away from fear.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how to buy this book. Where's this book at? How can people work with you? What's your website? And talk about those things for a moment.
Sure. My website is www.helengretchenjones.com. And my book is available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. And it's available both in Audible, Kindle variety, and also paperback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you're just an author. Do you offer any coaching? Do you have anything planned in the future that the audience may want to find out or know about or be a part of?
So I do intuitive sessions for people where we connect in and kind of do, they can ask questions, and sometimes family members drop in who are deceased or spirit guides or something like that. So it's just kind of an intuitive, see where things flow kind of session. Um, I I do teach here in Central Texas with another amazing woman. And so I don't know, there's always I'm just going with the flow of it. We'll just see where spirit or God or universe or wherever it takes me.
Awesome. Okay, guys, Helen Gretchen Jones. She's a death doula, channeler, intuitive. Go check her out. Check her book out, www.helengretchenjones.com. And I am so excited that you were able to come on the expansion of consciousness. We've had a wonderful conversation, and we both can tell, oh, we can go into some other areas and spend a whole hour and talk
I know.
about it, and maybe that's something we'll do. We've gotten the book out of the way. We may just come back and let's just talk.
I would love to ask you questions. Actually, I had so many questions about your experience with the regression and the quantum regression. So,
I tell you what, let's get back on and talk about that. I want it to be mainly about you today, and we can get back on and talk about that because there's some experience that I can share that you and I'll be like, okay, well, let me give you this experience. Let me give you that experience. I mean, it's fascinating that you can turn the body, well, not turn the body, because we are mediums.
yes.
That's why we have electricity. That's why we have all these frequencies, and the third eye chakra, so that we can tune in, and so you can see these people that you see. That's how you're able to
Yeah.
see them. That's different levels of frequency. But when you can use hypnosis to use a body as a medium, it's pretty incredible, and we're gonna get that together. Okay,
That would
I'm gonna
be
move you to
great.
the back. I'm gonna move you to the back. Stay there. Give me 1 second while I close it out. See, guys, um, Gretchen and we connect. I mean, we could probably have a show, which we will, Gretchen will be back on this show within the next month or two, and we're gonna just get deep and talk about experiences um, with hypnosis, with you know, her experiences as a death doula, intuitive, how that stuff works, why meditation plays a huge role in being an intuitive and being a channeler, being able to find this space of love, peace, and quietness in your body is the basis of using any of these modalities so that you can grow to a level where Gretchen is right now. But I want to thank you for listening to the Expansion of Consciousness podcast. And we've had a great time. We always have a great time when we have our guests on. But guys, go and see Gretchen. Log on to her website, and here it is one more time: www.helengretchenjones.com, and pick her book up. And learn something new, because I say this all the time. That's why we bring a variety of people on the show. I'm not the only game in town, and spirituality has no trademark. Everyone has an experience. Everyone has a angle or a book or a technique to share, and it's up to you to figure out who resonates with you the most. And you begin to work with that person. You begin to follow that person, or you may buy a book from this person, and you're logging some things that you like about what they researched, and you're following it, and you're just continuing to grow. But thank you again for being a part of the show. Remember, you can find us on Instagram at Expansion of Consciousness, on YouTube, on Facebook, Expansion of Consciousness. And this show will be out here pretty soon. But thank you. Thank you for being with us today, and good night.